I'm not trying to be the laughter police, but there's a very funny way some people have been laughing at movies that had me scratching my head for years. Why I felt like talking about it now is because I've just seen one battle after another, and it strikes me as strange that you're still here and not watching it for your third time. It's superb. Has Paul Thomas Anderson outdone himself? Has he drunk his own milkshake? Well, maybe. Anyway, of course, there's a bit of a fight online right now about viral tweets hailing how much they split their guts laughing at certain scenes in PTA's new masterpiece. So again, while I'm not trying to play Gustaha Harpo, I do absolutely think it's possible to point out that someone missed a humor cue. I wish I could try to get into how they missed the cue, but I doubt I have the time here. Obviously, I have to describe the scene, so it goes without saying that I will be spoiling one battle after another. If you've not yet watched it, please bookmark this, then scroll on to regular cat viewing, preferably not cats spoiling this positive Paul Thomas Anderson banger. The scene I'm talking about is when Lockjaw is finally kidnapped Willa and compares their DNA with his mobile testing kit. He gets the result that he's her biological father, and after some time slowly only utters up into her face, "Uh-oh." The scene and whole passage is horrifying and despair-laden, watching revolutionaries finally get snuffed by the US government's blitzkrieg. Thankfully, PTA and the gang break up some of this suffocation with Willa's earlier unassuming inquiry about Lockjaw's tight shirt. Of course I cackled. But it's completely weird to me a viral tweet called his "uh-oh" moment the hardest laugh they had all year. Maybe one could giggle like it was a Home Alone caliber penny drop, but laughter didn't occur to me. Please don't harass this person. I don't think they're evil, they're just wrong. But their goofy ass did go on to insist repeatedly that the moment is in fact targeted for your laugh. It's not. The moment is the make or break, do or die scene of the movie, wherein a hair-trigger fragile, bloodthirsty white supremacist impishly leers up into the restrained gaze of his quarry. A progressively more terrified child he consigns to cleansing with a mocking two-syllable, "You're fucked." The blood drains from her face, and he marches off unflinching to make preparations for her liquidation. There is nothing in the pace, in the framing, in the delivery, or lack of score that was after your funny bone. Yes, of course, PTA is no stranger to understanding humor will blindside and lay you bare, even in life's darkest, ripe for the coup de grace. Daniel Plainview miming a milkshake straw shortly before brutally terminating a contract. Dodd serenading Quell with a slow boat to China before terminating a relationship. Both these moments are far more macabre than comical, but Lockjaw's gotcha is comparatively pure menace that I believe had the vast majority of us in a mortified chokehold. Now, with laughter, like jump scares, like crying, the whole array of the human cinematic experience, the well-meaning cliche is you can't tell people what they're going to find funny. And that's fair up to a point. We probably both can't tell your body what it's going to do in the moment. But when you start salivating over time when someone describes freshly squeezed lemon, or should you yawn because you saw someone drained off a double shift yawning? I'd say part of our job being critical is reminding you there is no lemon and you're wide awake. But that's the physiological of the thing. I can't speak for this dude, but I suspect there's a level of more conscious performance to this sort of inordinate public laughter. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was some similar full-throatedly faux laughing at the subsequent scenes of Willa fighting for her life against dopey Lockjaw. My feeling's been they believe there's something signaled by their ability to make a show of their enjoyment. Which isn't necessarily a grave sin, it's just a really weird social quirk. Maybe in a part 2, I'll try laying it out with another set of tweets that embattled the OBAA discourse. In response to someone patiently explaining how yes, a character may be dopey, but still terrifyingly willing and able to destroy lives on a whim. The Groansome tweet retorts tersely, "I don't find that scary." Lowercase care. So next, I'm tempted to theorize on it all from two complementary fronts. As public signaling performative laughter, and as something that's been on my mind a lot lately, Zizek's analogy of enjoying coffee without cream and enjoying coffee without milk. Okay, so maybe I will see you in a part 2 playing the anti-giggle pigs. Love ya, bye. I use the Twitter discourse around one battle after another's tones going misread to air my own laundry of stuff in the cinema I've puzzled over for years. The one battle scene involves a child being threatened with undoing, and some found it in their weird hearts to only laugh at this, with no accompanying dread. I made the case they misread the creators and the room, and now I want to get into how this could happen in the movie house. Now, lol, my academic qualifications are a postgrad in economics, and I make a pretty mean pasta carbonara, but I'm not a shrink on human giggles, so I'm just having fun developing theory here, inventing psychology. This actually opens another can of vermicelli, but my beef with, it's not that deep, is maybe for another dish of the day. I digress. So I closed my last vid on this noodle, hoping to theorize how people crank laughter to 11 on scenes that were written for like 6, 7. I'm Unk and I'm chopped. I will present myself for public execution by the Zoomers, the Alphas, whatever you call them, at a later date. My apologies. I think there are 3 fronts this might operate on. Let's call them precursors, substrates, whatever. The psychosocial, the ideological, and the physiological, which I already did a lot of the lung work on previously, so let's start there. To be sure, we're all prone to laugh out of turn just physiologically. Let's start with me. My dumbass got tipsy at a 21st, and at a somber part of the speech I misunderstood, unsoberly, I started giggling while my poor ex was trying to hiss in my ear that this wasn't a funny part. Or imagine horrible invasive thoughts caught you after someone says their dad's sick. And you imagine Pappy pulling a 360 pop shove it over a cop car. Sick. Horror movies capitalize on this mismatch constantly, jumping you with what was like a completely normal midnight sprint when you thought for sure your life had just run its course. Interestingly, the converse plays out here, that we often laugh awkwardly after the horror-anticipated vaporizers, like silly me. As opposed to, say, feeling devilish dread after laughing at someone sad in their own birthday speech. So I get it. I've totally laughed off cue in movies too. The fun thing worth reiterating from part 1 of this is that our bodies will sometimes do their own thing. Drooling when you think of lemons, or yawning when you see a yawn. Took a lot to resist. But I must clarify, while... difficulty saying clarify, genius. While we can objectively point out someone's miscued their drool or yawn, this does not mean I'm against people losing themselves in a scene or suspending disbelief in a cinema. Go wild. Mostly. At worst though, unchecked, the same way our ancestors made us all fight or flight, waiting to learn if it's a saber-toothed tiger you're seeing or just a stripy rock, this physiological short circuit can reinforce and perpetuate caveman stupidities like racism, misogyny, literal dehumanization, etc. So we stay alert and critical on most lemons and yawns, or catch some bear paws foot. The physiological. The next possible precursor of underconvincing cackles I'll call the psychosocial. I've endured every Marvel and DC movie released, ever. And without fail, in every press viewing I've attended, this pattern laughter shows up too. Say Spider-Verse makes a feather-light reference to a niche spider buggy. Intent was probably drawing a snicker from the most encyclopedic spider fans, but the types I'm talking about feel the need to more loudly announce their enjoyment than the majority of the audience. Of course, that movie is legitimately funnier elsewhere. I love both Spider-Verses dearly. So what if we take something like Deadpool and Wolverine? Yet again, slopping through niche viewer deep cuts. One of the more rare Wolverines referenced should probably be a middling giggle, but once more, for some, it becomes a competition for who was most entertained by that deep reference. You probably already see what's going on here. This psychosocial dynamic is probably something we all do. Maybe mostly self-conscious men and boys. Admittedly, my jaw dropped when I heard Dora the Explorer reference the United Fruit Company. But also, yes, I immediately thought after I juiced the laughter a bit much. It is an astonishing reference, though, for an American film and a kid's film at that, but I'll piece together that Easter egg for you another day. So what are, by and large, boys and men doing here? It might be that conscious or subconscious performative signaling I glossed over last time. There's some sort of prize in declaring from the belly, "You got the niche knowledge" joke, or mere reference. I am the understander of the deep ways. Ask me for the secrets, ye seekers of truth. And like I said, even my dumb impulse was partly, IRL imperialism mentioned, would you like to know more about the Monroe Doctrine? Speaking of, it's similar to what we in economics backgrounds might call conspicuous consumption. The magnitude of your enjoyment of something is dependent on others witnessing you consuming it, whether you actually enjoy it or not. Weird, probably unhealthy, and mostly antisocial. I'd be contemplating commitment too, little hobby boxing buddy. My fellow press peeps are by no means that bad for it, but obviously the comic book movie community is blighted by trivia brinkmanship and policing who gets to speak on minutiae people over 14 shouldn't give this much of a shit about. But it's not just hostile, there's also a normal human panic of registering in-group membership, though of course this can drown outsiders. Which brings us to the most insidious precursor to performed laughter, also conscious or subconscious, the ideological, which is its own question about like language hegemony, the lingua franca, who says whether it's idio or idio. And I think this is betrayed subconsciously in possibly a lot of inordinate laughter at one battle after another. Obtuse approach first. Remember a century ago when Dave Chappelle walked away from it all for a hard rethink? It was partly prompted by a response to his own problematic skits about little race-stereotyping pixies tormenting our inner thoughts, hoping to draw laughs about our self-conscious self-censorship, multiracially. Except when doing the part about cliché black food choices, he heard someone laughing especially loudly and looked up, noticing his most enthusiastic spectator was a white crew member, missing the point of the skit and now laughing at and not with the race on the stand. Needless to say, this threw him into a bit of an existential funk about what he was even doing here, which he appears to have learned nothing from given his hacky, tired targeting of another systematically persecuted social group in trans women, some of whom are black and might also be self-conscious when ordering fried chicken, as in his skit. But do you take your fried chicken with black coffee? Last vid, I said this Zizekian caffeine analogy had been plaguing me for a mocha hot minute. That there is a philosophical distinction between enjoying coffee without milk versus coffee without cream. He suggests that in the roasted bean abyss of new political possibility, we must consider the unseen charge in a state of affairs. He invokes a spooky science idea of a negatively charged vacuum, empty space, nothing, but with different electric qualities. But I'll leave that to the quantum physics people. Before we get lost in the coffee, to simplify, we as moviegoers all pour into the pitch black of the cinema, faceless seats percolating in the script, each of us ostensibly experiencing and exhibiting similar emotional beats and meditations as the director might have expected. Except, some of us bring to one battle the desire for different black coffees. A lot of the peeps singling out OBAA's humor and vocalizing how they didn't in fact find scenes chilling were white. The scene in question being the torture of a black child. Elsewhere, they expressed they laughed at white supremacists plotting violence. And obviously, some of these scenes were written with the disarming blindsiding of dread with levity. In fact, Zizek's useful here again. I think he described a similar mechanic. Imagine a clown entertaining a kid. The kid digs it for some sick reason. Now imagine the clown taking off this mask to reveal another mask. How do you suppose this makes the kid feel now? Point being, when mostly POC users replied, "What? How? The scene's terrifying." While it is both, above all, terrifying, white users often tersely replied, "I didn't find it scary." And maybe it's overkill, but fortunately some did actually issue apologies for being outright dismissive of others' more objectively correct experience. Crucially, however, it was a dismissal or shortchanging of the creator's original intent. and thus a media literacy failure, in part due to ideological predisposition. I'll give you another way of thinking about black coffee. Media literacy. Zizek's coffee analogy reminds me of another recent mind-numbing phenomenon. Bovine-brained right-wingers, which is to say right-wingers, bemoaned rage against the machine turning political. My God. So you see, some people take their rage without their mom telling them to eat their peas, and others take their rage in absence of a fruit company assassinating their fellow countrymen. Coffee without. Two different withouts. But back to film on my clearly more broad media criticism channel. What I'm saying is there is a demonstrated, barely veiled relish in their laughter off the wrong reasons. Two other movie house examples come to mind to bring the idea home. And these are also like particular examples to my experience in criticism over the past 10 years. My ass was flabbergasted hearing arguably grown men audibly performatively howl at drab infantile misogynist jokes in the Kingsman series, oddly broadcasting their dry dickness, publicizing their unfuckability. Why? A sad little middle-aged prepubescent sanctuary for men who think their chief oppression was their mom saying, "Wash your ass or else." Similarly, in Tarantino, it's a safe space for bourgeois-insulated boy men to parade just how unfazed they are by photon-side hyperviolence. Well done! You withstood buckets of cranberry reduction. Want to look at some period blood together? Specifically, his abysmal Once Upon a Time in Hollywood made me wonder what the fuck is going on when I heard and read men laugh harder than normal at specific scenes. And a special relish at the limp dick's dreamboat cavalier Brad Pitt methodically mincing the Manson woman's face on a fireplace. Possibly enjoyed more for the "ooh, I flipped the cultural convention on its head. Women can take on-screen brutality too now. Triggered much?" than for its sanctifying ditzy blonde feminine purity. Worth remembering, another type of sanitization presents in laughing off insinuation Pitt's character. We must distinguish given his IRL lawsuit with ex-wife Jolie, including domestic violence, brutalized his wife. Quickly played off as part of industry mythos, as he gets to prevail in that community. Ask Tarantino's bestie, who coasted accusations for a century. So were you in rapture co-imagining a world where Sharon Tate et al. Were saved, or was there a different payoff at play? All this to say, let's be mindful of our latent ideological evils seeping into the cinema like this. See the opportunity to fix your heart or die. Anyway, that's me trying to put thought to a clockwork weirdness I've seen arise, mostly in scenes presenting opportunity for a prejudiced playground, while the rest of the cinema absorbed the movie like more healthily socialized human beings. And these days, as virtual picnics return to lynchings, memeing pawns of white supremacist instigation into based Chad fame, that alertness to your lemons and yawns matters now more than ever.